You know, one for me, which we were talking about, it kind of jogged my memory when you were talking about, we were talking about some stuff earlier. Is you know, when I came, I was a crew member here in 2003 before I had the opportunity to come here and be a part of the overhead in 2005. And I'll never forget, in 2006, I was doing my first firing boss assignment on my own, kind of thing. Rob Holt, who was a superintendent at the time, and it was October, it was 2006. We'd been super busy, and we had this assignment to burn this road out, and then hand it off to another crew, and then they were going to hand it off to another crew, and then they were going to hand it off to another crew, and we're going to put this fire away, put it to bed, kind of thing. And so we get going and we start firing, and you know, there's that things just kind of start happening, and I'd lined out all my folks that were on my firing team, and they're out doing their thing, and I'm up there walking with them, and we're burning, everything's going great. And you know, I had told the top burner, hey, you know, you stay 50 feet off the main fire, and then the next person was staying 50 feet, the next couple folks were staying about 25, 30 feet. And I said, I want you to contour with the fire. And I don't know if my instructions, I thought my instructions were pretty clear, but anyway. So at that time, Rob's driving around on the road. He was our fuel tender. He had the fuel in the soup truck, and boom, he gets a flat tire, like right there. So I see everything's going great, so I walk down the hill to go help him and a couple crew members and grab some more jerry cans to walk back up the hill with some more fuel. And we get the tire fixed, everything's good to go, and you know, I start seeing a lot more fire activity, you know, than I was expecting, or from what we'd been doing. And so I call the other captain on the cruise, John Wood. I give him a call, and I'm like, hey man, what's up? And he's like, yeah. He goes, you're putting up quite the header in that drainage. I'm like, what? You know. And then all of a sudden I'm getting another call from another superintendent who was on a rock, and he called down. He's kind of watching the same thing, and he was wondering what was going on, as we were sending quite a bit of fire up the hill toward all these folks up on the top. And I guess it was kind of a big controlled chaos situation, because there were a lot of local government engines, and they were kind of freaking out a little bit at all the, you know, this big header of fire coming up. And when I finally got up to where the crew was burning, I just dropped the jerry cans and went up and saw it. Instead of the guy contouring with the fire's edge, he decided to come way down around the drainage, so he caused this just super head fire going up the drainage. It wasn't a very big drainage, but it was big enough, and it was really thick. It was dog hair thick, and it caused quite the amount of fire up there. So that's not anything you can take back. That's something I tell the crew often, like when we're about to start a firing assignment, and you know, we do a lot of instructing while we're out on the line. And I told one of the crew members, I said, remember, the one thing about firing is once you put that stuff on the ground, you can't get it back. And that's exactly what was going on that day. So the fire calms down, everything, you know, we get no spots out of it, everything's going great, everything's going fine. We continue firing our piece of line. You know, Rob and I had a really good discussion down at the bottom of the hill. I learned a bunch that day, and we get to hand the fire off to the next crew, and their superintendent said, no way, we're not burning anymore. And we were like, what? Like, what do you mean you're not burning more? He's like, man, the fire effects you guys had up there it's just not conducive to what we're trying to accomplish here. And we were like, well, what do we do? So Rob and I are kind of sitting there, and Rob had spent a lot of time in the Hotshots, and you know, he'd been on cruise for a long time. So you know, we were both like, what do we you know? But he'd been a soup for like 2 or 3 years now, and it was one of those things like, what do we do? You know, and so the next crew that was going to take fire from this other crew starts calling Rob and says, just keep bringing fire past those guys. And Rob and I are like, I'm like, man, we can't. Can we do that? Can we not do that? And so division got involved, operations got involved, and we stopped the firing show. The problem was a couple days later the wind was going to shift. There was a front coming in. We were going to have this shift, and the wind was not going to be in our favor. The wind was definitely in our favor that day. Weren't going to have good conditions the next couple days, and sure enough, the fire blew out of that section that we didn't burn, and it caused a lot of heartache amongst the folks on the fire. We had to spend 2 or 3 more days working on that fire. And the one thing I remember, that fire camp, that's the coldest fire camp I've ever been in. It was about 17 degrees every day, every morning at briefing. So we had to spend, multiple more days at a fire camp at 17 degrees. So that was a long season. But yeah, I learned a lot of valuable lessons that day. There's a whole other part of that fire too, like a bunch of other stuff went on in that. The air attack had flown over and said, "Hey, you're getting multiple spots," and we couldn't figure it out. That's the other superintendent was calling down saying, "Hey, everything's good, everything's fine," and Rob was getting very, where are these spots? Like, you caused some spot fires with your firing, and I'm like, oh, this is like my nightmare. Like, I'm like, this is the first time I'm actually getting to do this on my own, and here I've completely screwed it up. And it turns out there was another crew from another agency. We'll probably just leave it at that. And they were firing on the wrong side of the line on another portion of the fire, which was kind of right in line with what we were doing. So that's where the spots were. The air attack was flying and seeing what was going on, and so they halted their firing. But there was about a 15 to 20 minute window there where I thought I'd lost this whole fire, and it was I felt about that big, and I was like, well, I guess I made a joke to Rob. I said something, I guess I got to lose one in my career or something like that, and that was like the wrong thing to say to him at that time, and we laughed. We really laughed about it after everything kind of mellowed out. But yeah, that was one of those times.